Ani Bojo, Jana Chigano Dijnakars, Sagin Ojibwe Nation, Nea Shingaming Donjiba. Hello, my name is Jana Chigano. I am a member of the Nea Shingaming First Nation of the Sagin Ojibwe Nation. I am also the Indigenous Liaison for Parks Canada Agency, Bruce Peninsula National Park and Fathom 5 National Marine Park. Today, we are broadcasting from the Sagin Ojibwe Nation and acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nations, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Nawash and Chippewas of Sagin, now known as the Sagin Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. Would also like the other presenters to introduce themselves at this time.
Ani, Erin Dunlop, Indigenous Cause. My name is Erin Dunlop, and I'm working with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Ani, I'm Ryan Lozon. I'm a fisheries assessment biologist with the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. I'd also like to acknowledge the work on this presentation by Brianna Redford, Chris Akawenzi, and Jordan Chigano.
Hi, I'm Kevin Harper, and I'm an ecologist with Parks Canada.
The Together with Giigoonyag Research Project is the first time we have had 3 levels of government working together. The research is one element that will help each of our organizations work together as we create mutual decision-making tools. The experience of learning to work together, of building relationships that are based on mutual respect and shared learning, are helping to acknowledge our history and move forward as a nation. Before the treaties and land surrenders, Nawash and Sagin were one nation, the Sagin Ojibwe. The traditional territory of the Sagin Ojibwe Nation extend east from the Lake Huron to the Nottawasaga River and south from the tip of the Sagin Peninsula to the Maitland River system. The traditional waters around these lands include the lake bed of Lake Huron from the shore to the US border and the lake bed of Georgian Bay to the halfway point. For many families, including my own, fishing is still a way of life. Dicomig are a socio-ecologically important fish species. They play a vital role in the ecosystems of Lake Huron. Since time immemorial, Sun have harvested Dicomig for ceremony, trade, and subsistence. The Sun have a strong cultural connection to and understanding of the species.
Dicomig populations in Lake Huron have undergone substantial declines over the past 20 years. This includes declines in the harvest, in population abundance, in the biomass of spawning adults, as well as in the recruitment or birth of new fish into the population. Next slide. Addressing these declines in Lake Whitefish, as well as understanding the reasons for the declines, are a priority for Sagin Ojibwe Nation, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and Parks Canada. Despite the socio-ecological significance of Lake Whitefish in the lake, we still have key gaps in our scientific understanding of the ecology of Lake Whitefish that we will be addressing with our research. There are many potential causes for the declines in Lake Whitefish. This includes invasive species, most notably dry-cinnid mussels, that may be reducing the food available for young Lake Whitefish. There's also concerns that climate warming is causing a reduction in the amount of ice cover on the lakes, which is also affecting young Lake Whitefish. There are concerns about overfishing, fish disease, habitat degradation, and reductions in water quality. Importantly, Indigenous communities around Lake Huron, including Sagin Ojibwe Nation, as well as harvesters, have expressed their concerns that the stalking of predators in Lake Huron is also reducing the survival of Lake Whitefish and leading to the declines. These concerns are what has led to the research study that we are sharing with you today. Next slide.
Looking at the history between the Sagin Ojibwe Nation with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, as well as Parks Canada, it has been there's been a lot of conflict, different perspectives. So when we decided that we wanted to embark on some research together, we needed a new way of doing things. And we decided to look at the two-eyed seeing approach. And Mi'kmaq elder Dr. Albert Marshall says it best: learning to see from one eye with the strengths of Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing, and from the other eye with the strengths of Western knowledge and ways of knowing and using both eyes together for the benefit of all. Sounds like a really simple concept. When you actually put this into practice, it's a giant step for many, and it's a lot more complex than it seems at the outset. Next slide, please. To begin our research, we determined that we needed to have foundational principles in order to make the relationship work. And that begins with this idea of ethical space. Ethics and good practices are really the center of how we go about working on research together. And I'll just go through some of the key concepts. One of those is that the research is place-based and issue-focused. So we're talking about the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation traditional territory, and we're talking about issues that are of interest to the community as well as to the partners, the national park, as well as the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. So like whitefish declines, ecology, things like that. And it's important to recognize multiple ways of knowing. So that's where the two-eyed seeing approach comes into it. Having shared and meaningful goals. So we spent a lot of time working together to establish what those goals are. And the importance of being open-minded and having ongoing learning between the partners. And finally, that we need to have some kind of mutual benefit, that everybody gets some kind of benefit out of this relationship, and also that it is equitable. Next slide. So the research is called Together with Giigoonyag, which means together with fishes, and it's a collaborative research initiative. And basically the idea is to look at all the different life stages of Giigoonyag and essentially to do a bunch of research to figure out what is going on, looking at these different life stages and what it means for the decline in Lake Whitefish. And most importantly, out of that research, that there has to be some kind of action that comes out of it. And that's where the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Joint Action Plan comes into it. That's an absolutely essential component of the research project. Next slide. In order to collect Saugeen Ojibwe Nation ecological knowledge, we are doing interviews, and there's a strong mapping component. We've already begun those interviews, and we've done some of the primary data processing, and in total we're going to be doing 60 different interviews. Next slide.
So one of the key components of this project is to use acoustic telemetry to improve our understanding of lake-wide lake whitefish movements, including collecting data on home range size and the seasonal movements of various populations in Lake Huron. This data will inform other monitoring programs and management efforts in the lake. To do this, our plan is to set up a grid with receivers spaced 22 kilometers apart throughout the Canadian waters of Lake Huron, including Georgian Bay and the North Channel, and to tag over 500 lake whitefish and a little less than half that number of lake trout. Next slide. To date, we have deployed 84 receivers in Georgian Bay and the North Channel, and will begin in the main basin of Lake Huron next spring. We conduct our tagging in the late fall when the lake whitefish come onto their spawning shoals. We have tagged 134 fish at 3 locations to date, shown in purple. The plan this year is to have 4 crews conducting tagging surgeries and tag 70 lake whitefish at each location shown in green. We also hope to tag some lake trout at some of these locations, just a little before the lake whitefish tagging when they come into spawn. Before we conduct any tagging, we are consulting with the First Nations and Indigenous communities whose territories we are working in to discuss the project, to see if they have any concerns or knowledge that they wish to share or are interested in being involved. Next slide. Another aspect of this project is to conduct habitat and shoal assessments where we are doing some of the tagging work. There has been a lot of change in Lake Huron in a relatively short period of time, and it is uncertain how impacts from climate change, algal blooms and invasive species like dreissendid mussels may be impacting key lake whitefish spawning habitat. This work will involve a lot of underwater mapping and habitat classification using technology like ROV and multi-beam sonar and other equipment that's aboard the Parks Canada research vessel, the RV David Thompson, which typically maps cultural resources like shipwrecks in high detail. The hope is that this work could be used to identify potential spawning habitats as well as where future restoration efforts could be focused. Next slide.
We are also conducting research on the early life history of Lake Whitefish. This includes doing larval fish and plankton surveys during the spring hatching period in order to address the limited knowledge we have of the factors that are affecting spawning success and recruitment. Another aspect of our project is conducting broad-scale fish community monitoring, and this is being done to develop indicators, including the number of age classes and fish present in populations, indices of fish population health, as well as indices of species diversity and richness. Next slide, please. So finally, we would like to reflect on the journey of learning together through doing two-eyed seeing. Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and Parks Canada have not always seen eye to eye and worked well together. It's really through taking the two-eyed seeing approach that we have come together to do this joint research and to address this high priority issue of the lake whitefish declines. Importantly, our work has been developed from the ground up together with input from Saugeen Ojibwe Nation community members every step of the way. It is our hope that this two-eyed seeing research will lead to more informed management decisions about lake whitefish and about fish populations in the lake. Through doing this two-eyed seeing research, we are enabling a deeper understanding of the ecosystem from both an Indigenous knowledge perspective as well as from a Western science perspective. We also want to put our research to good use by developing a joint action plan. Importantly as well, by doing seeing research together in a collaborative manner, this will allow us to build trust in the research findings that are coming from our work. Thank you very much for joining us today, miigwech, and we are happy to take any questions.